The declaration of war. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Concord was a monument to peace, its vast domed ceiling reflecting the soft glow of the 3 artificial suns that floated high above. Within its walls, thousands of alien representatives from every corner of the known universe sat in curved rows, their eyes and sensory organs fixed on the center stage. The chamber had stood for 3,000 years, witnessing debates, treaties, and historic negotiations. But today, it would see something far different. A sudden flicker of blue light shimmered at the center of the hall, and a towering holographic figure emerged, Supreme Warlord Sci-Fi of the Dominion Empire. His crimson-tinted skin glowed beneath the hologram's flickering light. His 4 muscular arms crossed tightly in a universal sign of hostility. His voice boomed across the chamber, shaking the very foundation of the Council's beliefs. The Dominion Empire declares the era of peace over. Gasps rippled through the chamber, followed by the sharp buzzing of translation devices, struggling to keep up with the rising tension. Delegates murmured in hushed voices, whispering across species and factions, their disbelief evident in their wide eyes and nervous movements. Sci-Fi raised one clawed hand for silence. "For too long, we have been bound by weak treaties and empty words," he continued. "For too long, we have tolerated the existence of an anomaly in this galaxy. Humanity." His golden eyes narrowed as he scanned the room. "No more." A moment of stunned silence followed, broken only by the nervous shifting of delegates in their seats. At the far end of the chamber, in a small but notable section, the human envoy sat completely still. Ambassador Daniel Hayes, a middle-aged man in a simple black diplomatic uniform, leaned back in his seat. His expression was unreadable. Next to him, his aide, Lieutenant Avery Collins, tapped at her data pad, a ghost of a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. The Supreme Warlord clenched his fists, clearly agitated by their lack of response. "Humanity has defied the natural order. You are reckless. You are dangerous. You are an aberration that should have been dealt with centuries ago." His voice darkened, and his golden eyes gleamed with malice. "And now we will correct that mistake. Surrender Earth and its colonies immediately, or be annihilated. You have 24 hours. The moment he finished speaking, the chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives of countless species shouted over one another, their translator devices overlapping in a storm of voices. Some cried out in outrage, others in fear. Some factions had long been allies of humanity, knowing them as clever, resourceful beings who had contributed much to the Concord. Others had always viewed them with suspicion. But never had a declaration of total war been spoken in this hall. And still, the humans did nothing. Ambassador Hayes merely exhaled slowly and stood. He straightened his jacket and finally spoke, his voice carrying easily through the chamber despite the uproar. "Are you done?" His words were calm, almost casual. The Supreme Warlord's nostrils flared in anger. "You think this is a joke, human?" A chuckle escaped from Lieutenant Collins. Hayes, too, let out a breathy laugh, shaking his head as though the entire situation was mildly amusing. "Forgive me, Warlord Sci-Fi," Hayes said, still smiling. "It's just, I thought this would happen a lot sooner." The chamber fell into stunned silence. The Supreme Warlord blinked. "Excuse me." His voice was laced with irritation, his towering figure shifting uncomfortably at the response. Hayes sighed, running a hand through his short-cropped hair. "See, for 200 years, we humans have sat at this table. We've traded with you, studied you, learned your languages and customs. We've listened to your speeches about peace and unity. And yet," he tilted his head slightly, eyes gleaming with something indiscernible, yet unsettling, "we always knew this day would come." A flick of his wrist activated a small device in his hand, and suddenly, every screen in the chamber went dark. Gasps filled the room as a new image replaced them. A fleet of human warships, hundreds of them, emerging from hidden positions across Sol's system. They were unlike anything ever seen before, sleek, sharp-edged, and predatory. Their matte black hulls reflected no light, their energy signatures barely detectable, and their weapons far beyond what humanity had ever claimed to possess. The Supreme Warlord staggered back, his eyes widening. The silence that followed was deafening. You lied." His voice was almost a whisper. Hayes smiled, but this time, there was no warmth in it. "No, we adapted." He took a step forward, his gaze unwavering. "Did you really think we'd just sit back and rely on the so-called peace you all so eagerly clung to? Did you think we'd just trust that it would last forever?" His voice grew harder. "You declared war on the wrong species." The Supreme Warlord bared his teeth, his fury evident. "We have the most powerful armada in the galaxy. Our ships can turn planets to dust. Our soldiers are the fiercest warriors to ever exist." Ambassador Hayes' grin widened. "And yet, you've never fought humans." The Supreme Warlord snarled. "We will crush you. Humanity will kneel before the Dominion Empire." Hayes chuckled. "You know, there's an old saying back on Earth." His fingers brushed against the Omega Protocol device in his pocket. "Never start a war you can't win." Then he turned and walked out of the chamber, his laughter echoing through the stunned silence. The Supreme Warlord of the Dominion stared after him, his rage twisting into something else, a cold, creeping realization. The Dominion had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. They had given humanity a reason to fight. And humans never lost wars. Humanity's hidden hand. Deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon, where no alien scanner had ever successfully penetrated, a command center buzzed with activity. Subterranean Command Station Omega, known only to the highest-ranking officials, was a fortress of human ingenuity, a war room where humanity's hidden power had been cultivated in secret for over 2 centuries. At the heart of the command center stood Grand Admiral Elias Graves, a man whose very presence radiated authority. His piercing gray eyes moved swiftly across the tactical holograms that floated above the circular war table. Around him, generals, admirals, and intelligence officers stood at attention, their faces grim but resolute. A single red warning light flashed on the center console, an indicator that the Dominion Empire had just officially declared war. Graves took a deep breath. "Well," he said, his voice calm despite the tension. "It's finally happened." Across from him, General Evelyn Carter, commander of the Earth Defense Forces, exhaled through her nose, her sharp features betraying no fear. "Took them long enough." One of the intelligence officers, Colonel Victor Hayes, folded his arms. "They think they're catching us off guard," he said, shaking his head. "They have no idea we've been waiting for this moment." A low chuckle passed through the room, but it was cold, calculated. There was no fear here, only preparation. The room's massive holographic display flickered, shifting from battle strategies to a real-time transmission from the Galactic Concord chamber. The image of Ambassador Daniel Hayes, Victor's younger brother, appeared. The Admiral tapped a control panel, unmuting the transmission. "Well," Daniel said with a smirk, "we knew this was coming." Cypher just threw his tantrum in front of the entire council. "It's official." Graves nodded. "We're ready." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That's what I like to hear. The Dominion gave us 24 hours to surrender. What's the response?" Graves leaned forward, his voice steady. "We give them more." The silent preparations. In the void of space, beyond the watchful eyes of Dominion spies, humanity's hidden armada began to move. Across the Sol system, planetary defense stations activated, orbital cannons emerged from hidden bunkers, and long-dormant stealth fleets powered up their weapons. From within the asteroid belt, entire artificially hollowed-out asteroids moved into strategic positions, transforming into mobile battle stations. But the crown jewel of humanity's secret preparations lay beyond the edge of the solar system, where no Dominion scout had dared to venture. Project Revenant. For 2 centuries, humanity had led the galactic community to believe they were technologically inferior, relying on outdated weaponry and cumbersome spacecraft. It was a carefully orchestrated deception. While the galaxy had dismissed them as a minor race, humanity had been building, refining, and perfecting warships beyond anything the Dominion had ever encountered. And now, those warships were ready. At Titan Naval Base, the command ship of the first human war fleet, the UHS Revenant rumbled to life. At 5 kilometers long, its sleek, black hull reflected no light. Unlike the bulky, power-hungry vessels of the Dominion, the Revenant-class battleships operated on zero-emission technology, making them invisible to standard scanners. Within minutes, hundreds of ships, from fast attack frigates to planetary siege dreadnoughts, began mobilizing. Their crews, trained in absolute secrecy, prepared for the battle they had been born for. Humanity had always known peace was temporary. And so, for 2 centuries, they had forged themselves into the deadliest force the galaxy had never seen. The Dominion's fatal mistake. Far across the void, the Dominion War Council convened aboard their flagship, the Exarch's Wrath, a monolithic battlecruiser stationed above their homeworld. Supreme Warlord Cypher sat at the head of the table, his golden eyes blazing with confidence and anticipation. "Humanity is an insect," he snarled, looking at his gathered generals. "Their ships are outdated, their tactics primitive. Our grand fleet will crush them before the week is over." One of his advisors, Grand Marshal Vectel, nodded. "We have over 2,000 warships at our command. Their fleets are scattered, weak. Their defenses will crumble the moment we strike." Cypher smirked, his claws tapping against the obsidian table. "Then let us show them what true power looks like." A low growl of agreement passed through the War Council. But they had made a fatal error. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Concord was afraid. Not of the Dominion. Of humanity. Word had already begun to spread. Humans were not reacting like a doomed race. They were not begging for peace. They were not panicking. Instead, they were waiting, watching, smiling, and something about that terrified the other species in the galaxy. Because when a weak species is threatened, they plead. But when a dangerous species is threatened, they wait. The unveiling of humanity's might. As the countdown to war ticked away, Dominion spy probes attempted to gather intelligence on Earth's defenses. None returned. At Saturn's moon, Enceladus, a small Dominion scout fleet attempted to breach the Sol system's perimeter. They were obliterated in less than 3 seconds. In the Galactic Concord chambers, the neutral factions began whispering amongst themselves. "Why aren't the humans afraid?" asked one. They must have something planned," murmured another. Back in the command center on Luna, Grand Admiral Graves received the final confirmation from his intelligence officers. "They're coming." Graves nodded and turned toward the room of waiting officers. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice steady, "we've prepared for this for 200 years. He turned to the holotable and pressed a single button. "Initiate Protocol Omega." Across the solar system, hidden human fleets emerged from black space, appearing like phantoms of war. It was time. The trap was set, and the Dominion had just walked into humanity's greatest deception in history, the first strike. The countdown to war had begun. Across the Dominion Empire, thousands of warships surged from their homeworlds, cutting through the void like an unstoppable tidal wave. Their destination was clear: Sol, the cradle of humanity. For 3,000 years, no war had truly tested the limits of interstellar combat. Skirmishes, yes. Minor conflicts, certainly, but nothing on this scale. The Dominion, a species bred for conquest and dominance, had never encountered a foe they could not crush beneath their mighty war machine. They believed humanity would be no different. They were wrong. The battle for the outer system. The Dominion's vanguard fleet, over 700 warships strong, emerged from the inky blackness at the edge of the Sol system. Their weapons, capable of obliterating moons, charged with deadly anticipation. Their soldiers, bred for war, readied themselves to spill the first human blood of this campaign. But there was nothing there. The Dominion had expected a defensive line, a hastily assembled force to slow them down. Instead, they found silence. Fleet Commander Varun, an experienced strategist who had conquered dozens of star systems, narrowed his glowing yellow eyes. "Where are the human defenses?" His mandibles clicked in irritation as he studied the void before them. His fleet had entered the Kuiper Belt, a region littered with planetary debris and icy fragments. His second-in-command, Warlord Krezix, sneered. "Perhaps they've already run." The fleet pressed forward, advancing at sublight speed, careful to scan for human defenses. And yet, there was nothing. Until there was something. Without warning, the silence of space was shattered by a series of rapid energy discharges. The lead Dominion battleship, a massive behemoth called the Exal Zereth, erupted into a fireball before its shields could even activate. The Dominion fleet had only seconds to process the attack before hundreds of human warships decloaked. The Revenant-class destroyers, sleek and terrifying, moved like ghosts through the darkness. Unlike Dominion warships, which relied on brute force and overwhelming numbers, humanity had spent centuries perfecting the art of stealth warfare. For 200 years, they had hidden their fleets, developing technology that made them nearly invisible to conventional scanners. And now, the trap was sprung. Within seconds, 40 Dominion ships were gone, reduced to debris before they could even return fire. The power of human warfare. Admiral Ronan Sloan, commanding the Black Revenants, stood at the bridge of the UHF Revenant. The ship's bridge was dark except for the glow of targeting systems locking onto their next prey. "Fire again," he ordered, his voice cold, calm. A new volley of hyper-accelerated kinetic rounds erupted from the human fleet. Unlike Dominion weaponry, which relied on energy blasts and plasma lances, humanity had perfected mass-driver weapons, projectiles fired at such ridiculous speeds that they ignored shields entirely. The Dominion had never encountered weapons like these. They had never fought against an enemy that refused to fight on their terms. The second wave of Dominion ships exploded in rapid succession. The remaining ones scrambled to regroup, trying to activate their battle formations. But humanity didn't fight fair. From the debris of fallen ships, hidden human strike teams emerged. Exo-suited commandos, launched from stealth pods, infiltrated Dominion warships before their shields could go up. Commander Alexis Reed, leading one such assault team, landed hard against the hull of a Dominion cruiser, her power armor absorbing the impact. A quick swipe of her wrist activated her breaching charge, sending a pulse explosion through the ship's exterior hull. Seconds later, she and her squad were inside. Their weapons, silent, deadly, cut through the ship's crew like shadows in the dark. Within minutes, the Dominion battleship was under human control. The first of many. The Dominion's panic. Fleet Commander Varun watched, horrified, as his fleet crumbled around him. The reports came in faster than he could process. "Ship destroyed. We've lost contact with the Xalvareth. We're being boarded. They're inside the ship. THEYREV or where?" He slammed a fist onto the console. How? How are they doing this? He had studied humanity. He had prepared for their outdated weapons, their weak fleet. But this was not the humanity he had expected. This was something else. The humans were silent predators, striking before their enemies even realized they were under attack. The Dominion's confidence crumbled. This was not a war. This was an execution. Admiral Graves' final message. Back on Luna, Grand Admiral Elias Graves leaned over the holotable as the first battle reports came in. Losses? Minimal. Dominion fleet? Decimated. Human casualties? Almost none. He exhaled slowly, watching the Dominion's great war machine falter before the first battle was even over. They had no idea what they had started. The Dominion had spent centuries bullying lesser species. Humanity was not lesser. He activated the communications array, and sent a message directly to the Dominion High Command. To the Supreme Warlord of the Dominion Empire, "You expected a war, but war requires two sides to fight. This isn't war. This is your extinction." The message cut out, leaving only silence on the Dominion's end. For the first time in galactic history, the Dominion knew fear. The shattering of the Dominion. The first battle was over. The Dominion's vanguard fleet, its proudest warriors, its most advanced ships, its most experienced tacticians, had been annihilated in minutes. For the first time in 3,000 years, the unstoppable war machine of the Dominion Empire had faltered. But humanity was not done. They hadn't just defeated the first wave of the invasion. They had dismantled it. And now, they were ready for the next phase. The Trap Titans, deep within Luna Command, Grand Admiral Elias Graves stood in the center of the war room, staring at the holographic display of the Dominion's remaining forces. The Dominion had sent over 2,000 warships, believing that sheer numbers would be enough. They were wrong. The vanguard was already gone, and the remaining fleet was moving cautiously, hesitant, their commanders unsure of what awaited them. They had expected fear and disorganization from humanity. Instead, they had found death waiting in the dark. Graves turned toward General Evelyn Carter, the head of Earth's planetary defense forces. "They're hesitating," he said, his voice low. Carter nodded. "They have no idea where our real forces are. They're second-guessing every movement." Graves smirked. "Good. That's exactly what we want." A hologram flickered to life in front of them, showing Admiral Ronan Sloan aboard the UA Revenant, leading the Black Revenants, the most feared stealth fleet in human history. "They're stalled in the asteroid fields beyond Neptune," Sloan reported. "They don't know whether to advance or retreat. Their command structure is breaking down." Graves nodded. "Perfect. Begin Phase 2. Sloan's smirk was razor-sharp. "With pleasure." Across the Sol system, humanity's hidden fleets emerge. The unseen executioners, the Dominion fleet, already fractured and uncertain, now found itself in complete chaos. At the Neptune perimeter, their battleships hovered, their formations broken, their commanders hesitant. The survivors of the first battle had sent frantic warnings, but they made no sense. "Their weapons ignore our shields. They board before we can react. They're invisible." The Dominion did not understand. They had spent millennia fighting enemies who used brute force, but Humanity had perfected the art of asymmetrical warfare. The first sign of the next attack was not a barrage of energy weapons, it was silence. Then suddenly, ships began exploding from within. Dominion warships collapsed, one after another, as human infiltration teams struck from the inside. In the shadows of the asteroid field, hidden long-range mass-driver cannons fired hyper-accelerated projectiles, shredding Dominion vessels before they even knew they were under attack. And then the Black Revenants arrived. Admiral Sloan's fleet, the deadliest human warships ever constructed, unleashed a coordinated assault. "Target engines first. Let them drift. Let them watch as we pick them apart." One by one, Dominion warships were rendered helpless, their engines shattered, their fleets immobile, left floating in the void, unable to escape. Then came the final blow. A single transmission echoed across the battlefield. "This is Admiral Sloan of the United Human Forces. You have one chance. Surrender or be erased." Some Dominion captains hesitated. Never in their history had they been given the option to surrender. The Dominion did not surrender. And so, humanity showed them what that meant. Sloan gave a single order: fire at will. The sky lit up with fire. Dominion flagships, dreadnoughts, and command vessels, ships that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, disintegrated in less than 10 minutes. And for the first time, the Dominion tried to retreat. But there was nowhere to run. Humanity had already sealed their fate. The collapse begins. Back on the Dominion homeworld, Drakkar Prime, Supreme Warlord Cypher stood in his war chamber, watching in horrified silence as the battle reports came in. His proud fleets, his invincible warriors, his unstoppable war machine, all of it was being shattered before his very eyes. This was not how it was supposed to go. He had underestimated humanity. He had believed them to be weak, slow, primitive. Instead, they had been waiting. And now, they were hunting the Dominion down like prey. A new transmission came through. Cypher hesitated before answering. It was from Admiral Elias Graves. The human's face appeared on the massive screen. Calm, cold, smiling. "You really thought you could conquer us?" Graves asked, his voice mocking. Cypher's claws tightened into fists, his body shaking with rage and fear. "The Dominion is the most powerful empire in the galaxy. We cannot be defeated." Graves chuckled. "You already have been." Cypher roared in fury. "We will never surrender." Graves' expression did not change. "Good. That makes this easier." And then, for the first time in Dominion history, a human fleet appeared over their homeworld. A human invasion fleet. And Cypher realized, far too late, that humanity had never been fighting for survival. They had been fighting for victory. And they were about to wipe the Dominion off the galactic map.